Today's lesson is the picture of Dorian Gray. Hi, everybody. My name is Roger.
And I'm Mike.
And it's our literature unit for the month of February. And we're going to be talking about Oscar Wilde, who I believe was an Irish writer. And his most famous novel was The Picture of Dorian Gray, which we're going to be talking about today.
That's right. Oscar Wilde was one of the great intellectual figures of the Victorian era. He was especially well known in the late 1800s. Not only a playwright, a great poet, an author, and also a wit. He was famous for being very funny and witty and, coming back with little jokes when people would criticize him or make fun of him. He would respond with a quick little comment or a joke that sort of turned the attack around on the attacker and sort of, made him quite the man about town. People, I think, always invited him to their dinner parties and other parties because you could always rely on Oscar Wilde for charming and witty conversation. And he was also a man who appreciated the beautiful things in life.
Indeed, and he was a handsome devil as well. There are some pictures of him, and yes, indeed, he does look like a fine gentleman. And we're going to be talking about probably his most famous novel, The Picture of Dorian Gray. It was published way back in 1890. Let's find out what this novel is all about. Let's listen to the first part of our lesson, and then we'll come back to discuss it.
The Picture of Dorian Gray.
Lord Henry was admiring the painting his friend Basil was working on, a portrait of an extraordinarily handsome youth named Dorian Gray, when the portrait's subject arrived for his final sitting. Lord Henry, a man of corrupt values, spoke to Dorian about the value of youth and sensual pleasures. His views impressed Dorian, who, upon seeing the finished portrait, marveled at his own beauty. He made a wish that he could remain young and flawless forever while the portrait's face changed. Dorian then took his painting home.
大家好，第一部分我们可以看到副词 extraordinarily， 这个字也可以念 extraordinarily， 指的是极其、非常或是特别。例如 It turned out to be extraordinarily simple to solve the puzzle that Aaron said was very difficult. 事实证明，要解决 Aaron 所说的极其困难的谜题，其实非常简单。或者 Becoming a lawyer is not for everyone because the legal system is extraordinarily complex. 因为法律体系非常复杂，所以并不是所有人都适合成为一名律师。另外，补充这个字的形容词 extraordinary, 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 一样也可以发 extraordinary。意思是特别的或是非凡的，像是 Despite his extraordinary talent, Gerald was too lazy to succeed as a professional violinist. 尽管 Gerald 天赋异禀，却因太懒惰而无法成为一位专业小提琴手。或是 Our submarine has captured extraordinary footage of sea sponges in a forest on the ocean floor. 我们的潜水艇捕捉到海床森林中海绵动物的特别片段。接着我们看到单字 corrupt， 这个字是形容词，它的意思是堕落的、道德败坏的或是腐败的。举例来说 All of the corrupt government officials were fired from their jobs. 所有腐败的政府官员都被解雇了。又或者说 When the corrupt politician was caught stealing money from the government, he was sent to prison. 当道德败坏的政客被抓到从政府那里偷钱时，便被送进了监狱。另外，这个字也可以当作动词，意思是使腐化或是使堕落。我们可以说 Elliot's conservative parents were worried that playing in a rock band would corrupt his morals. Elliot 保守的父母担心他在摇滚乐团玩音乐会学坏。也可以说 The woman on the farm believed that living in the city corrupted her son. 农场里的那位女士认为住在城市使她儿子堕落。再来，我们看到单字 marvel， 这个字是动词，指的是大为赞叹或是惊讶不已。例如 Erica marveled at the jewels she saw encased at the museum. Erica 对于她在博物馆箱子里所看到的珠宝惊叹不已。或是 Meredith couldn't help but marvel at the Golden Gate Bridge every time she drove across it. 每次开车越过金门大桥时Meredith 都会忍不住惊叹。另外，这个字也可以当作名词使用， 意思是令人感到惊奇的人事物。例如 Driverless cars are truly a marvel of modern technology. 自动驾驶汽车真是现代科技的奇迹。再举一个例子 The Grand Canyon is one of nature's marvels. 大峡谷是大自然的奇迹之一。
Okay, so the title of our article and the novel is The Picture of Dorian Gray. A picture can be anything that you look at, whether it's a photograph or a painting in this case. So it's a picture of Dorian Gray. He posed for this painting, and the painter was a man by the name of Basil.
Very interesting. So let's find out what this is all about. It begins, Lord Henry was admiring the painting his friend Basil was working on. So Lord Henry is an aristocrat of some kind. We can see that Lord would not be his first name. That would be his title, like Lord Nelson or Lord Wellington. People who've done great things in service of their country in Britain would be given lordships, become nobility and that kind of thing. So imagine this man is very wealthy, living in a big house. If you've seen Downton Abbey, you know, a life kind of like that. And he had a friend, an artist friend named Basil, who was a painter. And this was a very special painting that the artist Basil was working on. It describes it as a portrait of an extraordinarily handsome youth named Dorian Gray. So that is what the painting of. And yeah, that's another word for a painting of a person. We can call that a portrait. If someone describes the artwork as a portrait, you know it's a painting of a person and maybe not just a bowl of fruit or a beautiful landscape or something. So this is an extraordinarily handsome youth. Extraordinarily is like really, really extra, a lot more than you would expect or something like that. I had an extraordinarily busy day. I didn't even have time to have one bite of food or a sip of a cup of coffee. I had too much to do. It was almost unbelievable how busy I was. So here's an extraordinarily or unbelievably handsome young man in this painting. This young man's name was Dorian Gray, and it says, when the portrait's subject arrived for his final sitting, Lord Henry, a man of corrupt values, spoke to Dorian about the value of youth and sensual pleasures. Oh, I don't know if Lord Henry has the best intentions here. Seems this young man, the portrait's subject, or Dorian Gray, he arrived for a final sitting. When you pose for a painting, especially, which takes a long time, you, the person in the painting, will have to pose or sit for a sitting. That is basically one session when you'll stay there in one chair, not moving much for a few hours. The artist will paint you. So here he is, and Lord Henry comes in and he has corrupt values. I don't get the feeling he's the nicest, most upstanding member of society if he has corrupt values.
Exactly. So if you're corrupt, you're basically dishonest because you're going to take money or favors from other people because you are in a position of power to grant them favors. For example, maybe you are the mayor of a city, but you take bribes. So we could say you are corrupt. And yes, Lord Henry has these corrupt values. That doesn't necessarily mean he's corrupt himself. If you have corrupt values, that means, well, they're kind of contrary to popular thought or common thinking. And of course, when you hear him talking, you're going to maybe stop and say, wait a minute, where did you get that idea? So he's got these corrupt values. And of course, he was talking to Dorian about the value of youth and sensual pleasures. Sensual means having to do with the senses. So sensual pleasures would be, you know, making yourself feel good by looking at beautiful art or getting massages or traveling around the world or just enjoying life in general, maybe not working really hard.
Interesting. The pleasures of the body and the flesh, as opposed to, you know, the pleasures of education or living a spiritually pure life. Well, this young man was quite impressed with Lord Henry. Of course, this older gentleman with a lot of money and power. And here's Dorian Gray going, wow, this guy really likes me, and he's such a great, upstanding member of society. His views, it says, impressed Dorian, who, upon seeing the finished portrait, marveled at his own beauty. Okay, so Dorian is starting to see the beautiful things in life as being maybe the most important things in life. He marveled at his own beauty. Ooh, someone who does that today might take hundreds of selfies of themselves every day or spend hours looking at themselves in the mirror. And if you look at something and you're really impressed at something and you go, wow, look at that, and you can almost not take your eyes off it, you could definitely describe yourself as marveling at something. It's looking at something and being really impressed and going, wow, and geez, look at that. And you'd want to show your friends it, and it would really, affect you in some big way. If you marvel at someone's success, you think you were born from a poor family and here you are, the president of the country. It's just amazing. I'm impressed. I'm going to have to say, wow. So anyway, he's looking at this painting of himself and thinking, yeah, Lord Henry says I'm so handsome, and I really am handsome, aren't I? He's really impressed with himself, and he made a wish that he would remain young and flawless forever, while the portrait's face changed. Aha, here's the little trick in our book. And then Dorian took his painting home, and I think it's one of those stories where you're going to end up being a little bit regretful that what you wished for actually came true.
Right, so of course, at your birthday party, you might close your eyes and make a wish and then blow out the candles. So that's what Dorian did here. He made a wish. Gee, I'd like to remain young forever, and I would like to remain flawless without any problems, to be perfect. And then, of course, he took the painting home, and it looks like his wish was granted. Okay, that brings us to the end of the first part of our lesson for today. Let's move on now to the second part.
Soon after, Dorian became engaged to an actress, Sybil Vane, after seeing her perform and falling in love with her beauty and artistry. Sybil's brother, James, was worried because Sybil knew hardly anything about Dorian. One evening, Dorian attended Sybil's performance, but was crushed to see that her acting was now terrible. Later, Sybil explained that she could no longer fake emotions on stage, now that she truly loved him. Disgusted by her genuine sentiments, Dorian left, breaking Sybil's heart.
最后第二部分，我们看到形容词 genuine， 指的是真挚的、真诚的或是真正的。举例来说， Dolores could easily tell the difference between genuine and fake designer bags. Dolores 能轻易分辨出设计师名牌包真品和赝品的差异。
Okay, the story continues. Soon after, Dorian became engaged to an actress, Sybil Vane, after seeing her perform and falling in love with her beauty and artistry. So if you become engaged to someone, or if you get engaged to someone, you basically promise that you're going to marry that person, and they promise that they're going to marry you. You probably have an engagement ring, and then you later have a wedding ring. So, of course, if you propose to her, oh dear, you mean everything to me, let's get married. So then you are engaged, and you're going to get married.
And this woman's name was Sybil Vane. So Sybil Vane, he saw her perform. He fell in love with her beauty and artistry. Sybil's brother, James, was worried because Sybil knew hardly anything about Dorian. So James, being the typical protective brother, is like, who's this new boy who wants to take you out or is falling in love with you? I've heard all this news, but who is he? I don't think he's good enough for you, or something like that. James is protecting his sister from heartbreak or something. One evening, Dorian attended Sybil's performance, but was crushed to see that her acting was now terrible. Oh, I see. So Dorian is starting to judge people kind of on their outward looks and their performance, maybe in public. He's not looking at their soul and their heart and what kind of person they are. He thinks, well, if she's not a great actor, I'm not interested in her anymore. And this was a great disappointment because it says he was crushed. If you're crushed, you face a sudden terrible disappointment. You had high hopes and they didn't work. It's like your hopes are being destroyed or crushed. So what happened with Sybil and her performance?
Well, what happened is she kind of flubbed up on stage. Later, Sybil explained that she could no longer fake emotions on stage now that she truly loved him. So I think in that particular case, Dorian invited his friend Lord Henry, and maybe Basil was in attendance at the performance as well. And it was very embarrassing for him because he told them what a great actress she was, what great artistry that she had. But then she gave a pretty rotten performance, and the crowd didn't like it either. So, of course, Dorian was very embarrassed by that. And I think in their conversation later, he expressed his disappointment to her.
Very, very interesting. So, disgusted by her genuine sentiments, Dorian left, breaking Sybil's heart. Oh no, he's really starting to look at people on the outside and not seeing the inner person. So he's disgusted with her genuine sentiments. When you're disgusted, you're repulsed, something horrible is happening around you. You want to run away or leave or throw up or something like that. Or if you see someone behaving in a way that you find very, very terrible, you would be disgusted if you saw a large man knock down a small child and not help them or say sorry. You would be disgusted with that person's actions. How dare you? You knocked down that child and didn't even help them. That is horrible, and I'm having a very strong bad reaction in this case. In Dorian's case, he's having a bad reaction to Sybil's genuine sentiments, to her real feelings, because genuine is real, authentic. It's not fake in any way. It's absolutely real. And sentiments, yeah, basically emotions, your feelings, how you feel about something, your sentiments. So he's disgusted by her honest feelings. He wants her to fake being amazing so he can kind of show her off to his friends. And when she's like, well, I don't know about acting and it feels kind of fake to me, I want to do things with real emotion. He's like, no, that's terrible. You must look pretty and impress people. That's the most important thing. So he decided she just wasn't good enough for him. He left, breaking her heart. Oh my gosh, I'm afraid Dorian is losing his heart.
Indeed, he was disgusted by her sentiments. And remember, a situation that makes you feel that way is disgusting. For example, one time I asked for a glass of milk in a restaurant, but I was served a bucket of milk in the restaurant, and I said, ooh, that's disgusting. Nobody drinks milk from a bucket. In this particular case, he was disgusted by her sincere sentiments. She was sincere when she told him, well, I couldn't act because I'm so in love with you, but he thought that was disgusting. He thought, you should still be an artist. Even if you love me, that's great, but still you should be a great artist and actress, and you shouldn't screw up your performance like that. And Dorian was disgusted. He left, and of course Sybil was broken-hearted, the poor lady. Okay, let's move on now to the third and final part of our lesson for today. We will listen first.
At home, Dorian noticed his portrait's expression had changed. It looked cruel. He recalled his wish and wondered whether the portrait had become a reflection of his soul. Feeling guilty, he wrote to Sybil asking for forgiveness, but learned that she'd killed herself.
Okay, so at home, Dorian noticed his portrait's expression had changed. It looked cruel. So again, he took the painting home and then he took a gander at the painting. He looked at the painting. He peeked at the painting, but he noticed something unusual. Hey, the expression is different now. This person doesn't look happy and content and beautiful. This expression is cruel. And if you're cruel, that means you're kind of mean. Like some people are cruel to animals if they beat them or they starve them and things like that. In this particular case, the expression on the painting was cruel. It looked fairly mean.
Interesting. The painting is turning into a mirror of Dorian's soul. He recalled his wish and wondered whether the portrait had become a reflection of his soul. Exactly, that seems to be what's happening when he acts cruel in the real world in his life. The painting's expression or face, the painting starts to look cruel. So it's almost like a mirror of his soul or his emotions. That's why it's very appropriate to use this noun, in this case, a reflection. To reflect is to have light bounce off something, the way the light goes into a mirror and reflects off the back of the mirror and then goes into our eyes and we see the image of ourselves. And of course, light can bounce off things, reflect off things. Light reflecting off water can kind of dazzle your eyes. It shines in your eyes because the light is bouncing around off of surfaces and going into our eyes eventually. So the painting is now a reflection not of light, of his soul. So as he behaves poorly, the painting starts to show that. So feeling guilty, he wrote to Sybil, asking for forgiveness, but learned that she'd killed herself. Oh, that's terrible. He must feel extra guilty now, because when you feel guilty, or you could also use the noun feel guilt, if you feel guilt or if you feel guilty, basically you feel bad for your actions. You did something previously, and either right at that moment, or maybe later on you think, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I'm a bad person, and people are going to think badly of me, or something like that. You kind of want to go back in time and fix it. If you're guilty of something, you did something wrong, and you now need to face the consequences of your actions. Well, the consequence of Dorian's cruel behavior towards Sybil is that she killed herself. He wanted her forgiveness. He realized he was wrong, but he found out, oh no, she died. Something terrible happened, and she's no longer around. And, maybe his cruel treatment of her was part of that reason.
It could have been. This does sound familiar. I think this theme also was in the Shakespeare play Hamlet, in which Ophelia killed herself because she was rejected by the love of Hamlet. But that, of course, is another story, which we may talk about in the future. Who knows? But right now, we're going to listen, finally, to our Chinese teacher, Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第3部分的第2句写到 He recalled his wish and wondered whether the portrait had become a reflection of his soul. 他想起自己许下的愿望，纳闷是否这幅肖像画反映出了他的灵魂。那这边有2个重点，第一个是 recall 的用法。recall 当动词，它表示回想起、记起或是记得，后面可以接名词啊，接动名词或是接 that 子句。像文中是在 recall 后面接名词 recalled his wish，表示想起自己的愿望。那有时候可能会听到 From what I recall 点点点点点，就是说就我所记得的是怎么样怎么样。例如 From what I recall The museum is about 3 blocks from here. 就我所记得的，那间博物馆离这里大约是3个街区远。好，那么另外 recall 也可以当名词，这时候念作 recall， 它表示回想啊、记忆或是记忆力。那么有一个用语 total recall， 当我们说这个 somebody has total recall， 就可以表达说某个人他能够记得过去发生事情的所有细节，对过去发生的事情记得清清楚楚的。然后也补充一个相似的用语，就是 photographic memory， 就是指照片式记忆，这是指过目不忘的意思，用来形容某个人他可以精准回想起看过的人事物，就好像拍了照片一样存在脑海里面。好，我们刚才看到第2个重点是文中在动词 wonder 后面接 whether 引导的名词子句，去表达纳闷是否怎么样怎么样。那这边我们来整理一下 if 或是 whether 引导名词子句的用法。if 和 whether 都可以引导名词子句去表达是否怎么样怎么样，而且大多是可以互换的。可是 if 使用的限制是比较多的。whether 引导的名词子句呢，可以当主词、受词和补语。那么 if 引导的名词子句不能当主词，只能当受词和补语用。我们就来造3个例句。第一个例句是 Whether that's a good idea depends on a lot of factors。 那是否是个好点子，取决于很多因素。那这时候名词子句 Whether that's a good idea 是当主词来用，那我们这时候就不能把 whether 用 if 来替换咯。好，第2个例句是 I don't know whether that's a good idea， 或是 I don't know if that's a good idea， 我不知道那是否是个好点子。这时候这个名词子句 if that's a good idea 或者是 whether that's a good idea 就是当受词来用。第3个例句是 The question is whether that's a good idea， 或者是你也可以说 The question is if that's a good idea， 问题就在于那是否是个好点子。这时候我们看到用 if 或是 whether 引导的名词子句是当主词补语用，可是要注意就是 the question is 后面接 whether 引导的名词子句其实会比较常见，会比 if 引导的名词子句还来得常见哦。好，以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天的单字吧。
Extraordinarily. The soccer star was extraordinarily skilled with his feet. Corrupt. The corrupt politician took money in exchange for his vote on the law. Marvel. The audience marveled at the magician's tricks. Disgusted. Brenda was disgusted by the mess her brother left in the sink. Genuine. The teacher first thought the student was pretending to cry, but then realized that her tears were genuine. Sentiment. Mark really loves watching cartoons, but his sentiments are not shared by his older sisters. Reflection. The business's failure was a reflection of the difficult economic conditions. Guilty. Nora felt guilty about accidentally breaking Ben's glasses, so she bought him a new pair.
Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Mike.
I am Roger. See you next time.